It's a great pleasure to be here, and I want to express my particular appreciation to the organizers, the two principal organizers, the Holocaust Museum and the Shoah Memorial, and their partners. I don't know whether our task has been made much easier because of the excellent presentations this morning and your opening speech. In a way, issues have been cleared, which makes it easier, but of course, following that excellent performance, makes our task also not so easy. We see genocide, we want to move genocide from being seen as this terrible thing people don't want to talk about, don't want to touch, they tend to avoid, to something you bring down to earth as an extreme form of identity-related conflicts. And these conflicts emanate not from sheer differences, but from the implications of those differences in terms of access to power, resources, the dignity of citizenship, and all the rights associated with citizenship. And as I said before, in many of these countries torn apart by genocidal conflict, there is an in-group and an out-group, and people who are so grossly mistreated that the situation becomes intolerable, and they react sometimes in violent means, and then of course the counterinsurgency clamps down on them, and you have the makings of genocide. Now, we know that genocide doesn't just jump at you. It is preceded by what has been described by precursors, by other crimes, and therefore it's a question of laying a framework with indicators or what we might call risk factors that need to be looked into and catered for. My office has developed what we call a framework of analyses by which we assess situations and the risk of genocide. It has 8 sets of factors, and they range, and perhaps in the interest of time, I won't read them, but basically it has to do with the existence of intergroup relations and history of discrimination and violation or respect for human rights, circumstances that prevent the capacity of a state to prevent genocide, presence of illegal arms and armed elements, motivation of leading actors and acts that encourage divisions, dynamic factors and circumstances that facilitate perpetration of genocide, acts of genocide themselves, and evidence of intent to destroy in whole or in part, and other potential trigger factors such as elections, which in almost all cases play a very important role in risking mass violence. Now, my approach may be seen as comfortably emphasizing the responsibility of the state, respect for sovereignty, and perhaps highlighting the first 2 pillars, support for the state and all that. And I really want to repeat again, because I know this is a topic that is quite controversial with some of our partners. I really want to emphasize that what I'm talking about is what is doable. Doable in the sense of motivating the state to believe that your position in not only legitimacy at home, but your position in the community of nations depends very much on how you live up to your responsibilities for your own people. This is not just a blank check saying, okay, this is internal. There is accountability in it. But more, I'm not dismissing the 3rd pillar, where there may be need to take more assertive action, except that we know that is very difficult. We know that we are not well equipped to take care of that. It has to be there. It has to continuously be thought about and improved upon, but it has to be there if indeed the international community is going to live up to the 2005 outcome document commitment. I have also found that the regional approach is critically important. It is the countries of the region that are the first to be affected by what happens within a country, even if only the outflow of refugees who come with their political baggage. And in some cases, there is a solidarity there too. I recall a time when Salim Ahmed Salim, then the Secretary General of the OAU, was saying to the Africans, we must give a new interpretation to sovereignty using our African cultural values. Because we in Africa, he said, we are our brother's keepers. We don't look at what is happening to our neighbor, our relative, and close our eyes and say, this is a domestic matter. We get involved. And so we cannot be mindless of what happens within borders. And that's where the concept of the non-interference became recast as non-indifference. And that's why the shift from OAU to AU, in which I was somewhat involved as one of the panel, made sure that there was a provision that would entitle the AU to intervene in a country where circumstances warranted, where atrocities were being committed and people are dying. To my surprise, contrary to what people expected, I mean, somebody was telling me with the name G, nobody's going to invite you to their country because you will be giving the impression that you suspect genocide. But I have been invited by the AU to address their Council of Peace and Security. They adopted our framework of analysis to be part of their early warning mechanism. I'm in contact with sub-regional organizations, IGAD, ECOWAS, the Organization of American States. I'm going to, day after tomorrow, to EU for dialogue with them. I've just come from Asia, where to my surprise, nice surprise, ASEAN was very, very responsive. And again, talking about constructive management of diversity. I've been invited to the countries of West Africa. We went to Guinea, where the Prime Minister and his ministers said, when I came in, said, we were worrying that with your title, that you're coming because you think there is genocide in our country. There's no genocide, but the way you have explained your approach about constructive management of diversity, we do have serious problems of diversity, and we need the international community to come and help us. Let me say, we are now working closely together, Ed Luck and myself, to merge genocide prevention with the responsibility to protect. And this is very important because, as I said earlier, genocide is preceded by various violations and crimes. And if we broaden it to include R2P, that should theoretically provide ground for more constructive engagement with governments. Paradoxically, I thought that if we moved in that direction, it would make my task easier, but apparently the responsibility to protect is still being seen in terms of the last pillar, and people continue to talk about the threat of intervention. Yet over the last 3 years, we have seen absolutely a shift from initial attitude of even denying that there had been acceptance of the concept of R2P, to now accepting and supporting it with some reservations, reservations that are increasingly getting less and less, but will probably continue to be there. So we have to address them seriously. Let me just conclude by saying that as I have defined the challenge of prevention structurally, really it is a task for everybody, and it is one for the collaboration of all within the UN and outside the UN. But it is a tough one, and I want to close with a question, which I hope we can discuss. Recently, in my visits in the ASEAN countries, at least on 2 occasions, somebody said there has been a study, or he reported on a discussion among the P5 that he saw, dealing with the issue of if there were Rwanda today, if another Rwanda were to emerge today, are we equipped to perform differently? The answer these people gave was no, we are not. I would hope that if Rwanda were to occur today, it cannot possibly happen the way it did before, and the world not only watches but pulls out. And what we heard today, I hope, is evidence that if something like that happened, certainly we ought to do better than we did before. Thank you.